Welcome to the Demand Generation Club podcast, the first podcast dedicated exclusively to SaaS B2B demand gen secrets and best practices as shared by some of the top leaders in the industry. This podcast is brought to you by SaaS MQL, the account-based marketing agency that helps SaaS companies land six-figure deals with highly targeted campaigns by combining intent data, automation, and a proven methodology. SaaS MQL can help your company generate millions of dollars in sales opportunities within just a few months. To learn more, go to saasmql.com.
Kirti, I'm really glad to have you today on our episode of the Demand Generation Club podcast. Thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
For those people that are listening now who don't know you, can you share some information about your current role and your career trajectory?
So I'm currently the VP of Marketing at Bugsnag. We are a Series B startup, and we focus on application stability management for mobile, web, and backend apps, which is also in layman's terms an error monitoring platform. And we were acquired 2 months ago by Smartbear, and they are based in Somerville, a suburb of Boston. Prior to this, I was a consultant, and I had been consulting for about 2 years before joining Bugsnag. I did a variety of projects with big companies as well as startups back then. Prior to consulting, was also part of 3 other startups. Those were all full-time roles. And prior to that, I was a big company person who made the switch over to startup land. I'm glad that I did. I absolutely love it. Worked at a bunch of big companies, VMware being one of them. Way back, I was an analyst with the Gartner Group as well.
So first of all, congratulations on the acquisition. It must be a very exciting time to be at Bugsnag. Can you tell us about your team? Like what's the size of your team and what kind of roles do you have right now in your team?
We have 9 people on the marketing team, 10 including me. We have a growth team, which has folks that are focused on ABM, campaigns, programs, as well as marketing analytics, a product marketer. We have a content marketer role open. We have an events team that also helps drive our community program, as well as our swag program, which is quite popular. And then also a website producer, as well as a brand and visual designer.
That's fantastic. That's an ideal team, especially for a startup. So you are, in a great position now. You had this amazing career, and you're now a VP of marketing. And a lot of people in this community aspire to have the same kind of a career path. So in our conversation, you share a lot of really good advice. So I want to kind of focus today on these 5 learnings that you acquire from your career trajectory as a B2B marketing leader. So can we try to unpack this a little bit? If you have
let's go for it.
If you have to mention the first thing, what would be the first learning that you want to share from your career to be a real leader?
Yeah, so there are 5 learnings that I would say have been key for me. And in no particular order, but the first one is something that I'm stealing from my CEO. It's a line that I'm stealing from my CEO. It's funny, we were doing a go-to-market planning session, and one afternoon we said, let's take a break and go get some lunch. So we were walking to get a sandwich, and we were just talking about the decisions and challenges that were in front of us. And he basically said this line where he said, I've become comfortable being uncomfortable. And I thought that it summed it up so beautifully, because that's literally what you are doing every day, if not probably, every hour, every half hour. And so you're constantly looking at new challenges. You are being dealt with just unpredictable things that get thrown at you. You are placing bets, you are taking risks, and you're making decisions, right? And you're making decisions based so many times on complete unknowns and things that have never been done before. And so you do have to make them based on the best based on the best educated guess that you can. And it's all about, you learn over time that when your gut has been speaking to you, it's really something that you should be listening to. And I think that when I was younger, I now that I look back and I realize that even when I was younger, I had a pretty strong instinct, but you're just like, you're happy, carefree, you have probably fewer decisions to make. And you're like, oh, yes, in hindsight, you're like, oh, yeah, actually, my brain had said this to me. And maybe that is the door that I should have taken. But as you get older and you pay attention to every signal that you're getting, and, these voices in your head, you realize that there's really some value and some truth to that. And never dismiss the gray hair that you have, because it really is saying something. So I think that trusting your gut has been a big learning as well over the years.
And that's what separates like a junior person from a senior leader is, the junior person typically waits to be told what to do. And the senior leader makes the decision, not because necessarily knows everything, just because has the confidence to do it.
Right. You gotta trust what you are believing. And if you think that you have a rationale for that, whether it's qualitative information, whether it's data that you have, whether it's past experience, whether it's something you learned from a peer of yours, whether you've seen that situation play out, probably not in a professional sense, but somewhat similarly in a personal situation, maybe there are learnings from there. So there's you're constantly battling with these dilemmas and sitting on the fence. And so it becomes second nature to step back and say, wow, that was a really uncomfortable moment. Oh, wait, I actually had 4 of those today. And as you become more mindful and you start becoming a lot more introspective, and you're very much in tune with what what your body and your mind is saying to you, I think that it's all part of that journey.
Fantastic. I love
human
this.
journey, in fact, not just on a professional sense, human journey, even on a personal level.
So remember to become as uncomfortable as you can as often as possible. Perfect. What other learnings do you want to share with us?
Based on the trust your gut and the uncomfortable situations that we were talking about, one of the things, and I did mention that, hey, they can be learnings from the personal front as well. So one of the things that I say to my kids all the time when there's chaos in the home and someone is just like so unhappy because all the Skittles disappeared from the pantry and mom ate all the Skittles, but no one, she never told me, and someone else is worried that their textbook is not going to arrive on that exact day that the teacher said it should, all these things, just so much stuff happening with kids and the family. So one of the things I always say to them is respond, don't react. Because if you're reacting, you're doing it in the moment, and you haven't spent a single second in thinking about what you are going to say, what you just said, what it means to the other person, whether it could be hurtful, whether it confuses the other person. So stay calm, take a step back, take a few minutes if you need to, respond to the situation so that you can tackle it and handle it. Don't react to it because you've already gone down a rabbit hole, right? And then it's even more work to pull yourself out of that. But if you stay calm and you step back, you are giving yourself, you're equipping yourself with all the tools needed so that you can handle that situation.
That's absolutely right. And it's something I try to also convey to my team is, especially in business, don't take things personally. There is nothing personal. It's all about business. So if now you tend to overreact, just emotionally, right?
Right. And it goes back to, something that we all hear commonly and pretty frequently, that, hey, if you're really annoyed or frustrated about something and you start writing an email, don't send that email, right? Walk away, come back the next morning and read that email, and you yourself will be like, oh, I don't want to say that. So that's a simple example, but there are just so many other scenarios like this where so many times you're in a meeting, you have to think on your feet, and you can, the dynamics of the meeting may not be what you would have expected, but at the same time, there are ways to, just take, you take note of the moment and you digest the information that you have, and you can come back to it.
Yeah, I think also in my view, the best leaders, they're always calm. They never seem agitated, even in the moment of extreme pressure. You always see them really calm.
That's
and
right.
Always rational.
Yes. I'm not saying that I'm one of those yet. I mean, that is a very tough journey,
It's
right?
tough.
And it's complex with the myriad of emotions that are constantly, surrounding us. So yes, that is a ongoing exercise.
Absolutely. What else? So we have two very good learnings so far. What other things have you really gained a lot of insights from? Like, what is one thing that you want to share?
The ability to make data-driven and outcomes-based decisions, for me at least, that has increased over the years as well. And by data, I mean not just numbers. It could also be, informational data, qualitative data that you get. But going into every situation, knowing that there's going to be a positive side to it and there's going to be a negative side to it, in most situations, sometimes they're all just positive. And each of them has its own outcome. And each of them then has an impact to whatever that, whether it's a business driver, a business goal, whether it's a something new that we have to do in the marketing team. Maybe it's a new experiment that we are about to launch. So knowing that there are two sides to every situation, um, again, looking at it holistically on what each of those positive and negatives could look like, and realizing that you're going into this with your eyes wide open, and you are not only prepared if the situation goes a certain way that you didn't expect, or maybe you weren't able to move the decision in your direction, at least you are prepared to handle that.
And
And
you mentioned also about the knowledge that you acquire in all of these different situations over the years, right? Which
yes,
you probably have seen of many different kind of situation.
right. So, all that becomes part of the experience toolbox, and it goes back to the gray hair again. But the experience toolbox basically, it builds up from situation to situation. And then when you have all this knowledge and background, you are even extrapolating from that, right? And you know that, again, each situation is unique, but you know that you know that you are equipped to handle it. But at the end of the day, nearly everything is solvable and nearly everything is negotiable.
I like that. I like when you say nearly everything is solvable. If you really spend time and try to analyze all the data, there is almost always a solution. Almost
Yes,
always.
yes. And I have a funny anecdote there as well, talking about life's experiences. We were doing some home projects. And I had asked my general contractor, and I want to move these lights right over there and then do this. And, but I want the window to go there. And I said, is this possible? And I remember that he had paused and said, anything is possible. It all depends.
Depends on what you can put into it.
Right.
There's always like time, resources, constraints.
Right,
But
budget.
in an environment of unlimited resources and time, everything is possible.
Right.
Fantastic. So what would be the fourth learning?
The fourth one, I would say, and I hope I am wording this okay and not being a little bit extreme here, but basically it's, be brave. Don't be afraid to be brave. It's totally okay. Sometimes you just have to push yourself against the wall and say yes as much as you can, right? Because by saying no, then how will you ever know how it would have turned out? And then you wouldn't have taken the risk, and you won't learn. So be brave, but don't die on the battlefield. So um, I've seen in the past where several times people feel really passionate about making a certain decision, or for that matter, myself as well, that the company has this huge glaring gap and it needs to be addressed. And someone has to do something about it. And if it doesn't happen at that point in time, it's just the impact on the business is going to be more severe, right? It's going to be higher than several magnitude factors, um, several factors of magnitude. So uh, you know, yes, be passionate, but don't let it consume you, because you can then land up being negative, or maybe the way you're giving your feedback is not, it's not that constructive all the time. And maybe it starts popping up in the conversations you're having, and our brain is very good at playing games with us, right?
Mhm.
And so we got to control the mind as well. So even if you are, be passionate and be brave, but don't do it in such a way that you get killed on the battlefield. I've seen an instance in the past where someone was really right about several things that needed to be established or instituted in the company, but by becoming vocal, it didn't help. And so take stock of um, which are the things worth fighting for. You don't need to fight for everything, even if you may be 100% passionate about all of them. Prioritize, look at things from the big picture point of view, and you can't be a martyr. Everything can
Mhm.
happen, and you don't necessarily need to be that person.
You
And
have to
it's
pick your battles too, right?
right. You pick your battles, and then you and if you think that something is you're really getting into the muddy waters, and you're really going into a sticky situation, maybe you want to build some partnerships as well, right? And that way you are going in there as a unit, as opposed to landing up on the battlefield and you probably don't even have an armor or a shield or a sword or whatever ammo that you need.
I agree 100% on this. I've seen it multiple times,
Yeah.
and it can backfire. Absolutely.
Yes.
Uh, Perfect. What would be the last advice that you have for us?
So I just said something about look at things from a 360-degree point of view, right? Take stock of the situation, and that brings me to the next point, which is I've noticed that several times, I can wonder, sometimes I can get annoyed, and I see that with my peers as well, that the team members that they have don't necessarily have the same perspective that they do. So, we're not sharing the same perspective. And it's not because they don't want to or because they cannot. It's more than likely it is because they don't have all the information that I do, or they haven't been able to step back as much as I have, and really connect the dots. And you're not just thinking about the situation at hand, you also have to think about the metadata, right? What are the things and the factors that are being said between the lines, or the new forces that are coming into play here but are not necessarily being spoken about. But so you understand the metadata, you have to again translate that into what it means for that 360-degree view, and coming to the realization that my team members don't necessarily have that, they don't have in their toolbox the ability to get that big picture thinking. Interconnectedness of the engine is a term I use often. It's being mindful about getting in there and helping them out and coaching them to see this point of view or seeing the picture as well. But again, not moving them into a direction of, hey, I think this is what you should do. Providing them the information and then let them make that decision as well. Let them come back with that proposal. So instead of being annoyed and irritated, there's a way to turn that around so that it can work for both parties.
That's fantastic. I want to summarize this because these are great learnings, and I think there's a lot to take out from this conversation. So you mentioned as a number one, you have to become comfortable being uncomfortable, which I love that line, and we're gonna steal it from your CEO. You wanna respond but not react. You want to make data-driven decision as much as possible and gain that knowledge for the future, so that once you become older, you have a lot of learnings from past situation. You want to you can be a superhero, but be brave, but don't die on the battlefield necessarily. So pick your battles, and not everything has to become a fight. And then the last one that I really like is your team not always have the full context. They don't always see what you see. So you have to keep that in mind, but also coach them to learn and become aware of the 360-degree situation, basically.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. I love the coaching portion where it really feels so good to work with your team members to bring them on the journey as well. Everyone has potential, and so it's really our responsibility is to help everyone on their journey.
Absolutely. And for you, I have one more question, Kirti, which is, since you are in a very senior leadership position as a VP of marketing, what is that one thing that is keeping you up at night that you want to solve?
So I should start by saying that I am a pretty heavy sleeper, and some of my friends are teasing me all the time. I can also really sleep pretty long hours, and my weekends are very special to me. But that said, what worries me is the marketing mix, right? Is it the combination of things that we're doing? Is that enough? Should we do more? Or maybe what we're doing, the mix is right, but is the percentage split between them is right? Which dial should go up, which dial should come down? How much of that mix is something that we've done before, where we have the knowledge, versus experimental? Should the percentage split between those change as well? And then the team comes into play. Okay, do we have the right resources? Do we have the right competency levels? Maybe someone else has potential, but they're not in that role yet. What is the mentoring that can be given there? And then budget also is always a factor. But looking at it from so many different dimensions on, are we doing the right thing? Are we leaving, something on the table? Can we do better? Can we do something more of something? And did we totally miss this other thing that we could be doing? So
yeah, this I think the effectiveness of the marketing mix is a problem that is shared by many marketing leaders here. Yeah. So yeah, how to solve that is probably another whole podcast, and a pretty long one.
That's right. Because you constantly got to keep monitoring it, right? It keeps you on your toes. It definitely keeps you on your toes.
Absolutely. Kirti, this was really great. I learned a lot. So thanks again for joining our podcast.
Oh, my pleasure. This was wonderful. Thank you for the opportunity, Franco.
That's a wrap for today's episode of the Demand Generation Club podcast. If you're curious about how we're landing enterprise deals and unlocking millions in recurring revenue using account-based marketing and integrated direct mail campaigns, check out our website, saasmql.com. That's SAASMQL.com.